Hey guys, it's Mia here with Matt, and welcome back to the Vessel of Light podcast. I am so excited today because we are doing a Q&A. Very exciting. Some of these questions are very deep. Basically what I did is I just looked up some questions and we're just going to read right off of the question page without even really going over answers or anything like that. So we'll just see where this goes. It's going to be great. But like I said, I'm super excited. So we're going to just go ahead and start with the first question. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So this is all super candid, but
I need my glasses.
what is something that you admire about the way that I handle challenges or stress?
Well, you handle it very differently than I do, which is great. And actually something that I really admire about Matt is even when we first started dating, I always said he is chill as a cucumber because he's very chill. And when it comes to stress or challenges, he is definitely my calm. Wouldn't you say? I'm very here and he's very not here. He's always down there. We always say too that I'm the kite and he's the line, because anytime we're in a stressful situation, he's usually pretty calm about it and very level-headed. There's sometimes whenever a first initial reaction, wouldn't you say, is a little heightened, but then as time goes on, he's usually pretty chill and he doesn't show his stress very well. I feel like sometimes you have to say yeah, I'm super stressed out. And I'm like, oh, really? Because I'm it's very obvious if I'm stressed out. Okay, I'll ask you, what are some small things that I do that make you feel loved and appreciated?
All kinds of things that you do to make me feel loved and appreciated in small ways, from the time that we wake up, the way that you want to include me in your day, the way that you are always seeking to invite me to do things with you, whether it literally be as simple as let's go take a walk together, or let's make food together, let's eat together, let me make you a coffee. I feel like you have a very good heart about always being inclusive with me and being really in a lot of ways service focused with me as well, because I think that's your love language, and so you reciprocate in that a lot of ways. And I think another thing that you allow me to do is have my own space, because that's something that I need a lot of, and so you allow me to be creative and just have that alone time that I need sometimes, and so I appreciate that as well. But it's really hard for me to go down a list and try to list all the things that you do, but I would say probably the main thing that comes to my mind is just your all the time inclusiveness of seeking to wanting to bring me into your day somehow, and I really always appreciate that. So
yeah, I feel like that's definitely something, even right now in this season, just getting to spend more time together has been really nice. But that's something that I wouldn't say that I was always good at, was giving you that space when we first got married. And if any of you are watching and you're either first married or about to get married and you guys have very different love languages, which if you don't know what that is, we might do a whole video on what that is in itself. But something that you can Google, you can look up the 5 love languages. If you guys have very separate, not the same at all, you feel love in very different ways. It was something that was almost a little bit of a struggle when we first got married. I am, especially when I first got married, that's another fun fact, it kind of changes as time goes on, but whenever I first got married, my love language was quality time. I really wanted to always, I didn't feel loved if we didn't spend time together, and it's still something that I struggle with for sure, but it was really tricky when we first got married because Matt is someone who, quality time, yes, it's important, but he needs time to recharge.
Yep.
In the Enneagrams, he's a 5. So if you know anything about that as well, he needs that time. And I am a 9. So we're very different in those things. So giving you that space was something that helped us grow a lot, because whenever you had time to recharge, you were a better husband.
Yeah.
And I needed, as time went on too, realizing like I really need my alone time too. So that's definitely all great things for sure.
Yeah, you're exposing me in one of my biggest secrets, that I'm an introverted extrovert.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I'm just an extrovert, but it took me a long time to be able to be okay to be alone. So that's a whole nother thing that we could get into.
Yeah.
I'll let you pick the next question.
Okay. Let's see. What is a shared belief or value that has been crucial in guiding our decisions together?
Well, a huge belief and value that we share and is a big part of what this podcast is about is obviously Jesus. I know that's like the typical Sunday school answer, but it is very true. We used to make a joke with some of our close friends about saying like, well, as long as you guys just love Jesus, you can just get married super quick and you'll figure the rest out. I'm not saying you should do that, but that was just something that, was kind of a joke, because it is such a strong, it's like the spine, it's the backbone of everything that we do, and the thing that guides our decisions. We always say that Jesus is our north, so like thinking of a compass or thinking of just how people navigated like north. If you didn't know where north was, you don't know where anything else is, and that is definitely the backbone and the value and belief that's very crucial in deciding all of our decisions and what we want to do with life and everything.
Yeah, that's good. Good answer.
Yeah, I could ask you the same thing, but I already know the answer. So,
Yeah. What's your next question?
I will do. How do we align our personal values with our ministry goals?
Ooh, that's a good one. Man, I feel like we have, over the going on 6 years of our marriage now, we've really changed a lot of our personal values and goals to meet our ministry goals and needs in so many different ways, whether it be giving up financial incentives to, chase after being involved in church, and just really kind of like trying to pull away from lifestyles that we fall into very easily, and giving really all of that to God and just trying to follow after Him. We have, I think, in so many ways, we have aligned our personal values over a long period of time to just fit our, like I said, really our ministry needs in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Whether it be me being involved in youth, me, us being involved at church and serving. In so many different ways. Me being involved at Lifehouse. There's just been so many things where we've changed kind of because we came into our marriage with a heart for Christ, and we came in with some idea of what we might do, but we definitely had personal values that I think kind of clashed with those ministry goals, and honestly, we made just a lot of adjustments in our life. Even in your life.
And I think in like
changed.
that order too, like if that makes sense, like we are making sure we're aligning our personal values with our ministry goals and not our ministry goals with our personal values. Just because we've been on that opposite end of things of like, hey, I, want really nice things, and I want, in order to do that, I have to work really hard.
Yep.
And we just saw how God completely kicked us in the booty because of that. Like, it wasn't something that wasn't his plan for us. He was like, hey, we want you to, he wants us to be available and faithful and teachable, and that requires our time.
Yep.
And time, especially where we live, time is money. And
Yeah.
we decided to sacrifice that. So, and
Yeah, that's true.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, your question next.
So, can you describe a time when we disagreed and how we resolved it?
Yes. Disagreements in marriage in general, and especially in our marriage, has been something that we've tried to navigate as time goes on, for sure. Like, for example, oh my gosh, why can't I think of an example? I'm trying to think of, like, very recently. Like, what was it today? We disagreed on. There was something today. What was it?
I don't remember today specifically.
Oh,
was there something today?
Yes, I don't remember exactly. I think it was like how I react to things, or
Maybe.
like things like that, or like,
Yeah.
okay, so maybe a lot of it is through communication. Like, the big overarching answer is communication. So, for example, like, if
That's
I
true.
feel like, if I get upset because I feel like Matt is being dismissive, that was something today. Like,
Oh yeah, we did talk about that today. That's right.
if Matt's on his phone and I'm talking to him and he doesn't answer, I'm like, hello? Like, I get really upset, and then I start getting cranky, and then he's like, whoa, what is happening? So just being able to communicate of like, hey, if I am talking to you and you're on your phone, if you could just give me like a, hey, 1 second, and then you can go back to what you're doing, like, it makes me feel like you're not dismissing me. And he's like, just so you know, I'm never dismissing you. It's just like, sometimes it's a lot whenever you're like, hey, and like, I got a lot going on in my brain, and sometimes it always doesn't compute. So just being able to communicate those things with each other, so that way there's not like resentment, and doing it immediately, because that's
Yeah.
something that can be really tricky, is if
Yep.
we're having a disagreement and it's not an immediate like
Resolution.
hey, yes.
Yeah.
Like, you just get resentment, and it builds up, and then one day you explode on each other, and you're like, what's happening right now? So,
Yeah. You're like, why am I so angry at you? And it's just because you're not communicating well, which I think you put that really well.
Yeah.
That's honestly the thing, and we do that all the time, where
Yeah.
we stop whatever we're doing and address issues right as they come up, so that way
Yeah.
we can communicate well about them right there. And then it's awkward and uncomfortable whenever it happens, but it's so much better than the explosion of later.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that goes into the next question. And it was, what strategies do we have to ensure disagreements are constructive rather than divisive? And I think that plays into that. Do you think? Unless you have
Yeah.
something to add to that.
I think so. I think one thing that we've gotten better about too, with that specific thing, to ensure that we've talked a lot about fighting well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that earlier on in your marriage you might find that you fall into whenever you're unheard, or you feel like you're not being communicated with well, is you're raising your voice, you're agitated, you're flustered, all these kinds of telltale signs of anger, and it goes up and up and up to a certain extent, and then you're no longer rational or reasonable, and now you're just having this disagreement that is entirely unconstructive. It's only destructive. And so that's one big area of our marriage that we worked on as well over the years of, like, really, when we communicate with other, we're trying to keep as much as we can our voices level, even, not trying to yell or scream, or even on the complete opposite of that, not trying to stonewall or be cold or shut down, because that's a whole other avenue of that as well. So if we can keep it conversational, even when it's about really hard topics or things that we are honestly upset about. That's where we win those fights and
Yeah.
fighting well.
I agree. That took some time too, since I feel like, and with most households in general, it's easy to not grow up in an environment where you see it done well. Oh, this is a good one. How has working together in ministry impacted our relationship, both positively and negatively?
Ooh boy, let's start with the negative and then move to the positive. Just like kind of get the bad right out of the way first.
Yeah.
The negative part about ministry is that you can wrap your entire identity up into it very
Yeah, that's a
easily,
good one.
and you can confuse your own faith walk with your role or assignment in ministry. And so I feel like that's a huge thing that
Yeah.
we've discovered of, like, especially for myself, is that I could convolute easily the things that I'm doing with, like, oh, well, this is my own personal walk with Jesus. And part of the issue there is you treat it at a level of importance that it should not hold.
Yeah.
So you sacrifice time with your wife and time with literally any other aspect of your household that you should be putting first, because you're acting like all of your ministry goals are above all of those things. It's just this false equivalency of, like, your personal time with God and your relationship with God should come prior to your spouse, and then that goes before your kids, and then that follows, like, where ministry falls in, right after your family. And so if you find that you're giving way too much time to the ministry in some areas, like, because there were times and seasons where several nights of the week it'd be like, we're doing this and we're doing that and we're doing this, and suddenly you have 4 or 5 days of the week planned or whatever,
Yeah.
and that starts to leave very little time for your spouse, and that can be a really negative thing.
Yeah.
And then on the positive side of that, we have in so many ways we have really benefited in our relationship from being in ministry. It's grown us, it has stretched us, it has been like, even in those times that hurt a lot, we have come out so much stronger on the other side of it. And God has brought us through some really hard seasons together and shown us just a ton of growth, honestly, together. So I would say those are good negative and positive things.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Really did a good job answering that. Yeah, I mean, even there's not too much that I could add to that, other than just reiterating, if you don't have that, I like how you laid out the order of how it's supposed to be, and saying yes to too many good things, can deter you from great things. So just being able to decipher that and figure out what's good, and then there's so many positive things in ministry that has just really grown us.
And I think what's great about that too is that it can follow with any other thing that you want to put in its place, because sometimes it might be your job, you might not be in ministry, might be your job. It could be some other priorities maybe that you're putting first, and it can get out of whack very easily, and then you can see how it affects your life. But I think with ministry and even with work, sometimes it's easy to put those things first because you feel like you're doing the right thing for everybody, when in reality a lot of times you're hurting the people that you want to help. So
yeah, that's good. Okay, you can ask me a question now.
Okay. What is a memorable story from our ministry work that you think encapsulates our teamwork?
Oh, okay. I feel like I love the way that we connect with our youth and couples.
Yep.
I love the way that we can invite them into our home.
Yeah.
And, if someone needs a place to crash, we have a spare bedroom. And if we need to if they just need to pour out their heart, we can be there together and just be able to have the ability to communicate with each other and just like it's just great that God gives us, I feel like, you know, the gift of having people being comfortable with both of us.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's maybe not something, you know, or that's just a hard thing sometimes is, you know, maybe you feel more comfortable with one or the other, which is fine, but the ability to just have someone say, hey, I need to talk, and we can both sit down with them and not feel like, oh, you shouldn't be here or you shouldn't be here, and just be able to serve them well together and open up our home and have that and be able to make people feel comfortable, hopefully.
That's
I mean,
good.
we haven't heard anything differently, but you would hope, and just by the fruits of all of that, I would say.
I think some of that goes into the genuineness of the care and importance that, like, you know, we put on people, because really I think part of that is, like, when I think of memorable stories, I think of like our hearts being poured out for certain youth and couples that we've really brought into our home, and really just our ability to treat everyone like they're important because they are, honestly. So, and
like, if something more specific, since it kind of says like what's a, you know, a certain memory is, I always think of our good friend, I'm not gonna name who it is, but you know, going through different seasons with their relationship, and then just getting to see the fruit of marriage, and a marriage with someone who is God-fearing, and someone who exactly who they needed to be with. So, I mean, there is one, that was one situation, but there's multiple times that it just is like, wow, God paired us together because we equal each other out a lot too. So
that's good.
That's great for sure. Okay, that was a good one. Let's see here. Who is someone that inspires you in your faith journey, and how does that inspiration influence our life together?
Ooh, that's really good. So I can think of a few people, not necessarily that I want to drop their names, but they're all my friends. We're all very close, and there's a few of them that have absolutely inspired me in my faith journey, from all the way back from being an atheist, to leading me to Christ, to being there literally for those first steps out of the waters of baptism and giving me a big wet hug, and then us being close friends ever since. There are such good people from that local church that have just been alongside, that we made great friends out of right from the start. And I think that has inspired me in ways, because they were Christians long before I was. They were figuring out, you know, their marriages, their families prior to me as well. And so I love that I had great role models, some really good men to look up to and kind of be inspired to move towards. And I think you'll know exactly who I'm talking about when I say that, Mia. But
yeah,
I just,
definitely.
like I said, I don't want to necessarily name drop people or anything, but
yeah, that's really good. I guess it's your turn to ask me a question.
Is there a particular book, sermon, or teaching that has significantly impacted your view on marriage or ministry?
Well, I would say the first book that comes to my mind for marriage that we tend to always go back to, and one that we always refer to other people, is I almost forgot it for a second. Love and Respect.
Yeah,
but I forgot who it's by.
If you,
I
a
cannot remember
certain
his
doctor
name.
that I'm
But
struggling
if you
to remember right now.
you look it up, you'll be able to see.
It's funny because it's one of the first books that we read it together. We read it prior to going, like,
I'll link it in the show notes.
We were reading it through marriage
too.
Counseling, so it was great.
Yeah.
But Love and Respect is the book that came to my mind.
Yeah,
as well.
that's for marriage for sure. And then ministry, there's lots of different books that come to my mind. But I actually want, Matt he like his brain and names. Like he can name things off very easily. I could tell you what the book cover looked like, but I couldn't tell you the name of the book. I don't know why. But any of ones that I think of later, I'll link in the show notes. But I really want to ask you that question, Matt.
I mean, there's going back like many years ago, like Radical by David Platt.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And
Crazy
then,
Love.
Yeah. Gentle and Lowly more recently is really good as well, and also a very short read. None of these are, I mean, at least so far, have been, even Love and Respect, they're not super long reads.
Yeah.
And then not a ministry book, but I think a book that helped me sort of even just be a more like organized person was Jordan Peterson's 10 Rules for Life. I really enjoyed that one as well. And then on top of that, there is another ministry book here that I've been reading recently that I think is really good for ministry. And that was given to me by our pastor at church, but he gave us The Emotionally Healthy Leader, and that's been another great one for digging into all kinds of things, emotion related, and it's so great for you leading a ministry, you leading in the home. It kind of touches on every facet. So those are all the things that I can think of recently. I hate that I can't think of more, because if I wasn't doing this candid, I could probably rattle off much more. But regardless of that, those are obviously the ones that have really touched, my mind. So
yeah, that's good. I guess you technically need to ask the next one.
I do. So what is a personal goal of yours that you're excited about, and how can I support you in achieving it?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, obviously, a big goal of mine is this podcast, and something that's very uncomfortable for me. I am not a super techie person. I am not someone who is used to speaking into a camera or uploading or anything as far as that goes. But God has really placed on my heart that this is something that He wants me to do, and share the life experiences that I've had so far, but also connect with people who have had way more life experience than I have, and just things that I wish I, wanted to know, and ways that you have been supporting me and can always support me is showing up, like right now. I had you do this video very last minute, and you were like, sure, let me just brush my hair and
30 minutes
put on
ago, she was like, hey, you want to come do this thing with me? And it may be my first podcast episode, maybe not, but it could be. And I was like, sure, no pressure. Let's go do it candid. Why not?
Well, and that's just the thing, is like just jumping in and starting and supporting me with that. Also, he's supported me in like huge ways with this, actually. We'll probably do a separate video on our story and how we got here and everything like that, but you'll learn more of how he's supported me through this in that way too, but in huge ways for sure. But just being here, showing up, letting me bounce ideas off of you and everything, it's been great. What is one of your favorite moments from our travels or experiences together?
I have a lot here recently, because we've actually traveled a fair amount together, but I really, really enjoyed going to New York with you and my family. That was super memorable. I had never been to New York, and I have a pretty vivid memory of all of the sightseeing and stuff. I got to do a lot of that with my dad, but then at nighttime we got to go out to different places, and there was that ramen shop.
Oh my gosh, that was
amazing.
Fun.
We had a really good time with that. My sister was there, so that was a sweet time together with the three of us, and so that was really cool. Another thing is when we were in Florida, even recently, just getting to spend time on the beach, at the house, whatever, we did a lot of different things. And the year prior to that, we did all kinds of different stuff as well. Like we went parasailing together for the first time. That was amazing. We went to this little nature preserve while we were down there as well. That was so neat. Saw a bunch of different things that we had never seen before. So there's been, and then I mean even in that like similar vein, we had came back and we ended up going to Colorado and we spent some time. We went to a concert together at Red Rocks Amphitheater, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was, I'll never forget. Mia came up to me with this blanket that she had bought from the merch stand, and she was like, "It was the last one. They sold out," and it was just such like a cute moment, like just things that I don't think I'll ever forget. Like
it was a really neat experience for sure.
Yeah.
Just backtracking a little bit, I know we kind of talked about like dreams and goals, and of course like we love to travel, and travel is one of our goals that we have, and we've been so blessed and lucky for the amount of travel that we've been able to have. But going back to like dreams, how do you feel like we incorporate our individual dreams into our shared vision for the future?
I feel like we have to have a lot of planning and more communication, a lot of meetings that we really like. I guess you could say the adjective would be that we cook on, like maybe it's a verb actually, sorry, but that we really like do a lot of things together to where we sort of amalgamate our dreams. And I think a big thing that we've done throughout our relationship has been listened to one another's hearts as dreams and things have changed a lot, because our dreams have not stayed static from the time that we got married to now. Perhaps our broad goals have remained somewhat the same, but as far as specific dreams, they've changed quite a bit. And so thinking about that, that's a big thing of how we've really allowed for one another to do different things in our relationship, move through different jobs and different phases of life, and wanting to pursue totally different things from, you know, one year to the next. And so we've done a good job, but like I said, that comes with planning, it comes with intentionality, it comes with a lot of communication, because those things can also involve a lot of fear and a lot of frustration, and a lot of reeling in the kite back down from the dreaming landscape that it's in.
And when not to reel it in.
Yeah, and when to let it fly and just do its thing. So
I think the big words out of that, communication and flexibility.
Yeah.
Just those big things.
Yeah, don't set your plans too far in stone, because we make plans and then God does things and changes them around.
Absolutely.
And so, and that can even be, like we said, just different things that he lays on your heart, and different goals and things that amalgamate dreams that you never realized that you had, but then something changes one day and you're like, wow, this really means a lot to me. So
Yep.
Oh, that means it's my turn to ask you another question. So how do we stay encouraged when facing setbacks in our ministry or personal life? This is kind of in that vein of moving on from dreams, moving on from some travel stuff, and more challenges and how we overcome them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Where is that one at on here?
Right there.
I can... Oh, perfect. Well, it's kind of a deep question.
It is.
I would say that we stay encouraged when facing those setbacks, is really leaning on God's word. We have recently, and throughout our whole times of being married, we've had a lot of setbacks, as most people do. And there's times where we weren't encouraged and we were bitter and angry. But what really got us out of that is really just leaning on His truth, getting in community with people who are strong in their faith, and asking for prayer and being vulnerable, and knowing that God's plans are better than ours. And I think that goes into the last thing you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Just being able to be flexible and know that it's not Our plans are one thing, but God's plans are better than ours. So just knowing that and leaning into what the Word says, that He is the Good Shepherd and He is our anchor, and He leads us.
Yeah, and one thing I think to add to that too is just like our friends having like an awesome support group of Jesus followers and people that we can really rely on. Family that we can go to in moments of need. We are very blessed by
our
that.
Families have been very supportive in all of our setbacks, just being there for a listening ear or advice. Family and friends
have been a huge part of that. So helped us over a lot of issues.
Yeah, I would say so. What's one challenge we faced as a couple that you are proud of overcoming together?
I think without going too terribly deep into that question, kind of figuring out the last year of our lives about has been very challenging, and getting back into church, back into ministry. There's all kinds of unknowns and things that are scary and things that are challenging with that. So thinking about how we've really faced a lot of things, even in the last year or two, really coming through. We were sort of looking for a church to really call home for a while, and that has its own challenges in it, and then really settling and deciding on where we were going to go to church, and then kind of just like sort of dropping anchor there, if you want to say, like really taking port there and saying that like this is where we're going to be and this is the people we want to be around. And so like, and all those things they're amazing. They're a little scary. They're so exciting. So there's all kinds of things though, that we have really overcome, in the challenges sort of like being transplanted from one thing to another, being maybe well known in one church body and then not known almost at all in another one. So there's lots of things that we've gone through with that.
Yep, I agree. I guess it's your turn.
Oh, it is my turn. Okay. So kind of in the category of learning from each other, I wanted to ask you, what's a valuable lesson that you've learned from me that has influenced your perspective and actions?
Yeah. I think a huge thing that I've learned from you is the ability to stay calm in stressful situations. But I would say most importantly would probably be I've learned to appreciate the value of learning new things, and
it's very fair.
The importance of educating yourself daily, and knowing that it doesn't stop after you stop going to school, learning something every day and just being consistent. Also, whenever you put your mind to something, you're very good at doing the thing. And that's something that I've learned a lot from you too, is just that determination and that drive of just hey, this is what I'm going to do and this is how it's going to go, and not a lot's going to deter me from that course, and it's just one bite at a time. And just being able to be very compassionate with people too is huge, going through hard things and being able to be quick on your feet with responses on hard things too, without getting stumbled, and just leaning on God in those hard things, not letting your emotions dictate your actions. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yep, that's good. Goes back to the first thing you said about me. It's I'm kind of your Valium in the relationship.
Yeah.
That's funny. And then I think it's your turn.
Yep.
You got the last one.
Let's see here. Let's do this. Let's do, what's a piece of advice you would give to a couple just starting out, either in their marriage and with another layer added to that, ministry?
So if it's just their marriage, my probably biggest piece of advice is going to go back to that word that we've hammered on a couple different times now, and that's going to be communicate well. Communicate well, and that will help you fight well. It'll help you get through all that, because essentially, when you're married for a little while, you're going to have that beautiful honeymoon phase. And, for most people, I'd say the vast majority, they're going to say, we'll never fight. Everything's going to be great. We love each other, and we just love each other so much that we'll never go through those kinds of hard things together. And so, my big thing would be just start communicating really well early on, even if it seems awkward or like maybe a little bit out of place, because that's another huge part of it is once the butterflies are gone and once this initial kind of rush wears off in a while and you don't just look at that person and just feel all the love deep down in your heart, you'll realize that you have to start choosing that person every day, and that you have to start prioritizing that person, and that you actively make a choice every day to wake up and love someone. And loving someone isn't just this like passive thing that we do or it just happens and it's like a frou-frou, like, oh, it was all magical. So that's a big thing if you're just getting started out in your marriage, is communicate well and choose to love one another well. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I had pretty early on in my relationship that I still remember a lot of times is, if you're not working on your marriage, you're working on your divorce. And that was like a huge thing that I remember sticking with me. And something that kind of drove us through those early stages of marriage, of where, like I said, we were reading Love and Respect, and like, even though things were hard sometimes, we were really working through those hard things. If we're adding the complicated other level of ministry on top of it, it's going to go back to really sorting out your priorities and making sure that, and that can be a practical thing too. Like, let's take it one step of, give you like an example. Maybe 4 nights of the week are your ministry nights. 4 nights. And then that leaves the rest of those nights for you and your spouse. Just being alone, you know what I mean? And if you think about it, like, there's 7 days in a week, so you're already at the majority, right? So if you start pushing into 5 and 6 days, you're cutting more and more and more time away from your spouse, and you're ultimately leaving a lot more room for them to feel pushed away and not like a priority, and like you're not helping them. So so I would say that's a huge thing of taking that big step of sorting out priorities and making it in a practical way. Say like, hey, Wednesdays, whether that's Wednesdays, Sundays, Thursdays, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have your nights, those are your ministry nights, those are the things that you do. And then, man, maybe on those other days, you're way slower to respond to people. You're way less, barring emergencies and life coming up and obviously crazy things. Like, if people just want your everyday normal stuff from you, you slow down a little bit from that, especially in your evening time. Like, if you work ministry all day, when you come home, just like putting a stopping point on it and saying that, like, hey, like, as awkward as this sounds, like, working hours have ended now and I'm with my family. And if I don't use this time to prioritize with my family, I'm not really prioritizing them. So that's a big thing.
It seems backwards, right? Like, it should be like, well, ministry and God, because ministry is first because God is first. Well, if you're not prioritizing your family, it just ends up working against you, and you have to set those boundaries. And that's something that we learned the hard way. That's for sure. And just to kind of like add on to just starting out in ministry, is don't lean on yourself being able to do it all. Like, I know it sounds very cheesy and cliche, but it is so true. Like, you need to ask for strength from the Lord. You need to ask for his direction, and to make sure that you're not wanting to be in ministry just so you can be on a stage. Just so that way it can be about me, because ministry is the complete opposite of that. Jesus washed his disciples' feet, And if that's not something that you're willing to do, if you're not willing to work in the shadows, if you're not willing to do things without approval, then what's your why? And asking yourself that and checking on yourself with that is super important. So just starting out, just make sure you ask yourself, what's your why? Is it for the one, or is it so that way you can be seen and applauded?
That's really good.
So, because if it's the other, you're not going to go far in
I
that.
think like the biggest practical piece of that too is if you truly want to be there to pour out for other people, you have to be filled up. And you need to be in an environment, like I said, like prioritizing those things, because that time with your family, those things that you're putting first before your ministry, those should be the spots where you're getting refilled. That's the place where you're coming out and you're feeling energized enough to go back and tackle the ministry, because you'll only love those people in the ministry as well as you're loving yourself and your family.
And it makes me think of like even just like the name of this podcast, with us being his vessel. Like, how can you be a vessel of light if you're an empty vessel? Like, you can't pour out if there's nothing pouring in.
It's like I have no light to show unless I'm constantly renewing and rejuvenating that, with the renewal of your mind, like we see in Romans every day, and really just rekindling that love, not only for Christ, but for your family, and hopefully using that energy to pour out.
Yeah, and basically everything that we said, goes back to even in your first times in marriage too, just being able to put each other first. So it's super important. But I feel like that this was very successful. We got in some really good questions.
We did.
It's kind of fun not reading them beforehand and
we just did everything candid. It was great.
Everything. But I'm super glad we went through a lot of these. Definitely we're gonna do a story video of our story and how we are where we are now and what God has done in our lives, so just so that you can get to know us a little bit better and everything. But we're excited for what the future holds. But thanks so much for joining us today. Make sure you leave a review if you liked it. It helps out so much. So leave a review, post on your story. I would love to see you guys watching it, and make sure to rate the show and share with your friends.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining me this week on Vessel of Light. My hope and my prayer is that this episode empowered you to be who God created you to be right in the season He has you in. If you found this episode encouraging, please share it with friends and family who might find it uplifting as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how I can continue to support and encourage you in your faith journey. Stay connected with me on social media at Vessel of Light Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a blessed week.